Tell me if you can relate to this. When you are feeling unmotivated, in a slump, or you feel like you need a change, you search for advice on the internet. You might search Reddit for threads on how to get your life together, or YouTube for videos on how to get yourself motivated, or just a plain old Google search on how to be more productive. Often you'll listen to the start of a video, hear meditate every day, and you'll think, definitely heard that one before. You'll switch to a new tab and you'll read the advice to start exercising your self-discipline muscle. You'll be like, doesn't really resonate. You continue searching, looking for this new nugget of wisdom that will absolutely be the missing piece of the puzzle that will change your life. I've gone through that cycle before, and after going through it many times in my early 20s, I've come to a realization. There is no new individual piece of wisdom that will transform your life. And that fact that there is probably nothing out there that you will read, that you will listen to, or that you will watch that will on its own change your life is the most important piece of self-help advice that you can embrace in order to actually grow. To be clear, I think that self-growth content is useful, clearly. Behavior change is my thing. I am fascinated by it. I enjoy the self-growth world. So long as the ideas that are being promoted are healthy and useful, I'm into it. But what I found more helpful than sifting through the insane amount of self-help articles and content online when you're in a moment of struggle is instead revisiting the basics. The stuff that you've already learned, the things that made an impact the first time around, are often the things that you need to go to. Revisiting, rewatching, relearning can often be far more helpful than searching for the elusive new thing that is going to change your life. Seeking out new information and always learning is absolutely something that I encourage. I'm all about it. But sometimes when you are constantly seeking out newness, you become dismissive. You'll hear someone telling you to practice self-compassion and you'll dismiss it because you've already watched that TED Talk. You read an article about how meditation changed someone's life and you put it to the side because you're like, yeah, we all know meditation is good for you. But already knowing something is very different from actually practicing something, and that's where it's easy to go wrong. You kind of put your blinders up in search for newness to the point where you disregard the basics. Something that I think about a lot when it comes to this is religion, specifically the Bible. I'm not religious, but I grew up in a religious family, and the Bible itself, I think, is a great concept. It's this book filled with a lot of wisdom, I'm sure, that you revisit and you restudy on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. Religion knows that you need to be reminded of the lessons that you've already learned. It knows that its scriptures won't sometimes be fully understood and appreciated by you, but in 5 years' time, those same scriptures could resonate hard. It realizes that revisiting information, even if you've already read it, dwelt on it, you know it, is still useful. Every week, at least in the churches that I've gone to, they'd pick a passage or a section from the Bible to study and dive into even further because they know that there's more to unpack and more to revisit. In this video, I want to encourage you to become a revisitor, a person who relearns things until those things are fully embedded in their day-to-day. A person who recognizes that knowledge isn't power, but what you do with your knowledge is. And that often lack of knowledge is not the answer, but lack of applied knowledge is the answer. One way to embrace this mindset is to create a commonplace book. A commonplace book is a central location where you store all of your thoughts, your ideas, your notes, your anecdotes, your observations. A quote from Ryan Holiday's article on commonplace books from Seneca explains it pretty perfectly. We should hunt out the helpful pieces of teaching and the spirited and noble-minded sayings which are capable of immediate practical application, not far-fetched or archaic expressions or extravagant metaphors and figures of speech, and learn them so well that words become works. Ryan Holiday promotes a physical commonplace book or note cards. I know myself very well, and I just know that carrying around a box of note cards would not work for me. So I have a Notion page where I store all of my life notes or my commonplace notes. This is something that I like to revisit and reread over on a weekly basis. That way I'm not just getting inspired in the moment, writing things down, and never thinking on those things again. Sometimes it takes months for learnings to truly sink in and become embraced in your life. But by constantly revisiting those learnings and asking yourself questions like, have I implemented this? What have I actually taken from this and applied to my own life? You're pointing your mind in the right direction. Joyce Meyer once said, point your mind in the right direction and your life will follow it. And I fully believe that. Secondly, use the power of checklists and templates. We know that I love a good checklist and template. A great book that I would recommend that anyone read is Decisive by Chip and Dan Heath. It essentially walks you through a step-by-step framework on how to make better decisions in your life. That's something that you can go back to over and over again that could be potentially transformative to your life, so long as you make it easy to access and easy to implement. One way that I have done that is by taking the questions in that book and putting it into my journaling template, a template that I use often, so I'm always going back to those questions and they're far more embedded in my life. I've also created a decision-making checklist in Notion that I can go back to whenever I am considering a tough decision. As a result, I'm actually using that information. I'm revisiting that information constantly. While I may not be rereading the book over again, the core concepts in the book are being embraced in my day-to-day life. If there is advice, a system, a framework that you have learned about, think about how you can integrate that advice, those systems, into your day-to-day through templates, systems, checklists. Maybe there's something that you could put in your bullet journal, in your daily planner, in your weekly planner, in your to-do app, whatever it may be. Don't let your learnings become a moment of inspiration. Let them become a lifetime of action. The next way to change your mindset on this is to become a rereader, a rewatcher, and a revisitor. Self-growth books are not equivalent to the Bible, and I'm not trying to say that they are, but there are some books that it's really worth revisiting. Every time that I reread Getting Things Done by David Allen, I learn something new and I have a new revelation. Deep Work by Cal Newport, I had a completely different take on it and look at it the second time that I read it. How to Be Yourself by Ellen Hendrickson was such a good book that I reread it almost immediately after reading it the first time, and I got more out of it. Instead of reading things once, letting them inspire you, make it a practice to reread. If you don't reread the entire book, try rereading your notes on that book. If you got so much out of it on the first time reading it, think of what you'll get out of it the second time, the 10th time. On the screen is a quote from apparently James Clear. I haven't actually been able to find him saying it since I screenshot this particular quote, but he said, "Everyone already knows this is very different from everyone already does this. The fundamentals get overlooked all the time. Don't mistake knowing an idea as a reason to avoid implementing it. You don't need more ideas, you need more action." If you liked this video, you might like my video on making more decisions to improve your life. I'm gonna have that video linked on the screen and down below. I appreciate you so very much, and I will see you soon.